All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Limitless MD. I'm your host, Vikram Raya, and today we have Dr. Stephanie Pearson. She is an OB-GYN that after an injury decided to reinvent herself, and she felt that there was a need for physicians to be well represented in the disability insurance space. And after mindset and entrepreneurship and sort of inner growth, she came up with this company, PearsonRavitz, which is one of the top disability insurance companies that really caters to the physician and really advocates for the physician. And I want to invite her to the podcast. What if you could reclaim hours of free time each week, create legacy building wealth, and devote more energy to your passion projects without giving up on your career as a life-saving MD? My name is Vikram Raya, functional cardiologist, high-performance coach, and real estate expert. And I'm here to give you the tools, strategies, and solutions you need to transform your life so you can unlock your limitless potential and achieve greatness, all the while freeing up your precious time. Welcome to Limitless MD. Let's dive in. Thank you, Stephanie, for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So people are wondering, like, an OB-GYN, that's a great career. Like, did it make sense perhaps to pivot into this, or do you, how did this all come about?
So to be quite honest, I was forced to reinvent myself. I know that a lot of your listenership and followers are practicing clinicians who are also looking for other avenues. I sustained a career-ending injury and was forced out of clinical medicine. So kind of in a quick nutshell, I got called to do a precipitous delivery. My patient kicked me in the shoulder, tore my labrum. I ended up with a frozen shoulder, had surgery. My surgery didn't go as well as planned. I have not been cleared to do OB or operate. My orthopedist actually put in black and white that I was a liability, and I was unceremoniously terminated the day my FMLA was up, and then found out that I was not insurable by malpractice. So it wasn't oh, well, now I'm going to go do this. I actually went through a pretty dark period where I had no idea what I was going to do. I tried medical editing. I tried some biotech consulting. I did some defense malpractice work. But I kept coming back to the fact that all of my friends were asking me to look at their disability policies because I found out that I made some mistakes out of sheer ignorance. And I felt like, wow, with all of these people asking me to look at their stuff, I should probably do it ethically. So I went and got licensed. And it really happened very organically that I truly felt like I had not been properly educated. And we're going back 25 years. I think there's been a huge push in financial literacy since then. But when I was a resident, nobody talked about it. And when I became an attending, my senior partner said, I have a guy, right? And trust him, he'll take care of you. Well, he didn't. I had two policies, both had issues with them. I was lucky enough that I had them. I didn't have to sell my house. My kids could stay in preschool.
They paid some of it, but not the full extent of your true salary. I mean, as OB-GYN, you made a reasonable salary.
Right. I had not kept pace with my income. I didn't know that my bonus could get covered. And so one of my policies wasn't a true specialty specific policy. So I am still 9.5 years later, I have to send in my earnings every month, and they get to decide how much of my benefit they're going to pay. And one of my policies didn't have some of the bells and whistles that it should have had. And so I haven't gotten an increase in the last 9.5 years from that policy. And so
Stephanie, I have to ask, I mean, I think I don't know much about disability insurance at all. I just know that I know many physicians just take it on. Perhaps it's something that when they first join their employer, they're told to do, or, their financial advisor at like their bank where they do their financial advisory, they're like, oh yeah, just add this, tack this on. And it seems like it was almost an afterthought because no one really thinks, oh, that's going to happen to me. And it happened to you. So can you, what's the best advice you can give to people in terms of, I mean, specifically physicians on, hey, here's the top 3, 5 things that no one tells you about that you need to include that are not included?
I would say the most important is that the policy is specialty specific, not just by your occupation, but by the definition of total disability. There are quite a few companies out there that say their own occupation, but when you read the document, they may define own occupation as something called held by the national economy, not specific to what one employee does at one employer site, which allows companies to cast this really wide net that says this is what you would, could, should be able to do based on your training, education, and skill set. And additionally, when you look at how they define total disability, it'll often read that you're disabled if you can't do your job and you're not gainfully employed. And that definition stinks. Most of us are hardworking, type A, want to be productive, want to get out of the house. And what you want the definition to say is that you're considered totally disabled if you can't do your job, regardless if you're gainfully employed in another occupation. It's one word,
Yes.
but it makes all the difference, right?
Regardless, that's the word.
Right. You want regardless instead of and, right?
And
The
that one word can cost someone
thousands,
several $100,000.
Yeah. I mean,
a year, probably millions for their lifetime.
I went on claim at 40 years old. I will be on claim until I'm 65.
25 years. Oh my God.
Because my shoulders not getting better. I've plateaued. At max, on a good day, I can lift it about 110 degrees. Oddly, I woke up in 2021 with a frozen right shoulder. So they don't know if it's from overcompensation or if I have an underlying connective tissue disease. I'm on claim until I'm 65. That, my one policy that I told you I still have to hand in every month, is because it wasn't a true specialty specific policy. I had what's called a transitional language, which says I'm considered totally disabled if I can't do my job, regardless if I'm gainfully employed in another occupation, until I make my pre-disability earnings. That extra phrase is a problem. Now, somebody could say, well, isn't disability insurance income replacement protection? And once you're making what you were making, do you really need it? Well, the issue is it doesn't take earning potential into view. I wasn't at my ceiling. I was 40 years old, right? So my income wasn't at its ceiling. And if I had gotten hurt my first year as an attending, huge difference. I have residents, I have fellows that have had to go out on claim. If that were their language, they're only getting covered until they find a job that pays $60,000 or $70,000 a year. There's a ton of them, right? I mean, I'm not in a terrible place. I was making decent money, but it didn't cover me for what I thought
so
I was being covered.
Is this the industry on purpose protecting themselves so they don't need to make claims? Or is it just oversights in languaging? What is this?
I think it's both, to be quite honest. I think it is, let me take a step back. I think the insurance industry is one of the most archaic industries out there. There's no standardization of language. They're looking for reasons not to pay people, right? But they do. And that's the end game is every single one of my clients, knock on wood, that's had to go out on claim has been paid. I think that there is
awesome. Good for you.
Thank you. I think there's an element of the industry itself. I think that there's an element of who's representing the industry. And don't get me wrong, there are other good people out there, But for the most part, they're salespeople who are trying to make money, who are trying to feed their families. And I get that. But there should be some higher ethics involved. And I always say that we lead with education. We don't lead with sales. We've actually purposefully taken commissions out of play. Our producers who we've hand curated, who we've taught how to do it kind of our way, they have no idea what the insurance companies are paying PearsonRavitz. All of our employees are salaried. I don't want anyone coming back and saying that the advice that they're getting from me or my people is based on money. It's not. I don't even know, which is probably a terrible thing for a business owner to say, but our CFO is my husband, and I assume he's not letting me get screwed. So, so we've kind of taken that piece out of it, right? Like somebody will say to me, well, how come the other guy I spoke to didn't tell me XYZ? Or why did they try to sell me this policy instead of what you're talking about? 99% of the time, it's money. It's the more they sell, the more they make. And they're not really incentivized to do what's right.
Yeah.
And that stinks, but it's a fact that exists.
Let's talk. So you mentioned two things. One is like, that the word, the regardless, where, if you're injured
Or sick.
injured or sick in your professional, like if I'm a cardiologist, and as long as I can make my same money somewhere else, I'm technically not due my disability. But you're saying, hey, if I can't perform as a cardiologist, then yes, I'm owed that money and I can still work somewhere else and do something else.
Correct.
And then the second one was the your income until you hit a certain threshold and then they stops paying. Is that right?
That's mine.
Okay.
That's not what people really want.
Right. And
what are the other things that sometimes get slid in, either languaging or riders or caveats or exclusionary clauses that can sometimes screw physicians over?
There's so much there. Okay. So there are things called riders that help create the perfect picture. There are some riders that personally I think are not negotiable. There are ones that are. There are ways to reverse engineer a policy to make it more palatable. I think that there is a myth that there's negotiation available with insurance, kind of like buying a used car. The fact of the matter is, I control none of it. I don't control the product. I don't control the pricing. I don't control how much somebody can get, right? There are a lot of people that have this myth that disability insurance is going to make them whole. There are internal algorithms that each of the carriers utilize that take into account what's your income, what, if any, group employer benefits do you get, and who pays for them, because now we're talking about taxation, right? And they tell me what you qualify for. It's not like you can come to me and say, Steph, I want $30,000 a month in benefit. I'm willing to pay for it. If your numbers don't work out that way, I can't make that happen. The one thing that we can control is service and advocacy. And I truly believe that we do a really good job up front to manage expectations, to understand really what are the limitations. Because yes, there are things the companies aren't going to cover if you have pre-existing diagnoses. But if you're aware of that going into the process, it's not a surprise. There are, as I mentioned, there are things where we will go back to the carriers and try to argue. If you broke your ankle 10 years ago, right? And the company says they don't want to cover your ankle. Okay, I go back and I say, come on, it was 10 years ago. There have been no issues, no complaints. I get that you have to do your risk mitigation, but how long do I have to wait before I can come back and try to get that put back on the policy? So it's called a reconsideration. So not every exclusion is permanent. And you want to know that you have somebody who's going to go back and fight for you, right? Who's going to stay up to date and make sure that you're doing the things that you're supposed to be doing.
So does your firm, PearsonRavitz, does it take care of physicians in all 50 states?
Yep.
Okay,
And
great.
we have clients in all 50 and Puerto Rico.
There you go. That's awesome. And doesn't matter, all specialties as well.
All specialties.
Okay. And tell me when the best time for someone to come to see a firm like yours that's a physician advocacy firm versus just a, big box insurance company or some tag along,
Right.
physician disability company.
The truest answer is the day after match. Once you've matched into your future field, we can get you what's called OC classed. So every physician for every company gets what's called an occupational class. It's their internal risk mitigation. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that a cardiothoracic surgeon is going to be more expensive to cover than a hospitalist pediatrician, right? So we all get classed. And as medical students, pre-decision, pre-match, everybody gets classed as the most expensive because they don't know how to risk mitigate. And I've seen med students taken advantage of in that way.
Okay.
Once you match, you know what your class is. You're the youngest you're ever going to be. I hope you're still relatively healthy. And that time between match and starting is kind of a nice downtime, in my opinion, to go through this process.
Okay.
If we miss that jump, then my next is absolutely before you finish training, because there are discounts available while you're in training that go away if you wait until you're an attending. And again, can save you thousands over the life of your policy.
Okay. I got 3 things that came to my mind, Stephanie. And hopefully you can help me guide our listeners here. So number 1, guys, the younger you are, some of the young people listening to the podcast, post-match, medical student, maybe wait, post-match, probably. And then right before you're going to start your real career, definitely go to a firm like Stephanie's, because again, with these kind of things that can potentially cost millions down the road, or hundreds of thousands of dollars of non-coverage because of the way that things were phrased, it does not make sense to work with someone who does not have your back. Number 2 would be, what happens to the people who are already knee deep in their career? Can they come and get additional insurance, or maybe give up a policy and get a new policy, or get maybe layered policies, perhaps? I don't know what the terminology is, but maybe you can help share that with our listeners.
Absolutely. So later is always better than never, right?
Okay.
I always tell people, and using, you talk about mindset, right? So yes, it's going to be more expensive the older you are, but if you factor in the point that you haven't paid into it for a certain amount of time, the company has to make up some of their losses. And so I tell people, think about it as you've won the game up to this point, and now we're protecting you for your future, right? And there are times where somebody comes to us already with a policy that we can audit and say, yes, this is good. No, it's not. What are the cost benefit ratio of replacing a policy, or, as you mentioned, layering in a new policy? So it's almost, right, we're not supposed to talk in definitives. It's almost never too late. Some companies will only offer new policies up to a certain age. So yes, I have had to tell somebody before, like, look, there's really nothing I can do for you. I hate when that happens, but we are nothing if not brutally honest and completely transparent.
Is there an age to where I don't need insurance anymore? What would you say? Like, and I'm going to actually address something about how to become self-insured in a second. But
I was going to say, it's not
okay.
an age, it's a wealth.
Yeah.
The day that you do not have to go to work because you need your paycheck is the day you cancel your policy, right? And this is going to sound salesy, and I don't mean it to. You have to think, if my last paycheck were actually my last paycheck, would I be okay? If the answer is yes, then you don't need this insurance. If the answer is no, you need the insurance. It really is that simple. And
I love that dichotomy. I mean, it's pretty clear cut. And it, the way I thought about it is over the years, I kept on saying, hey, can I, and this is probably not the right philosophy, but I was like, okay, instead of paying disability, let me use that money and create multiple streams of income and really get to the point where I could retire from medicine early. Because that was a choice. But if you're still practicing, yes, I would say have insurance, have disability, make it smart, run it by someone like Stephanie, but work on multiple streams of income to where you practice for the love of the game. And if you choose to one day be self-insured, you can do that too.
Right. And you took the words right out of my mouth. I tell people, the day that you don't have to go to work is the day you call me and say, hey, Steph, sorry, it didn't work out for you, but I won the game and I'm out, or I'm doing it because I love it. And I always say that's the day that we're canceling it. We'll celebrate together and rock on with your bad self.
That's awesome. So Stephanie, what I admire most about you is how you were victorious from your darkest hour and you reinvented yourself, and perhaps it was forced, perhaps this was what you were meant to do, who knows? But regardless, not many people can scale to this level of success from those depths. How is it that you were able to do that? What was the strategy, the technique, the passion, the trigger? Who helped you? What was going on there?
I would say, number one, without sounding trite, it was what I wanted my children to see. Like, what was the legacy that I wanted to leave behind? And I've been very open that at one point I was suicidal and wrote my kids letters, but it came down to, that's not how I wanted them to remember me. So that's part of it. Part of it is surrounding yourself with the right people. And that's people that may have an expertise that I don't have. We got a business coach. We, are really intentional about who we hire. I joke that I think it's harder to get into med school than it is to get a job at PearsonRavitz. We have like 4 layers of interviews.
Wow.
And it's because it costs a lot to replace people. It costs a lot to train somebody. I only want to do it once, right? We have, I'm happy to report, we have a really low turnover rate. And the turnover that we've had, I had one of our employees decide to go back to med school. Like, that's awesome, right? And things like that, where people are kind of moving on to fulfill their true selves. And I think that part of our scale just happened. And I really can't take complete responsibility for it. There was a period of time where things were happening so fast that we were really just trying to keep up. And it's been in the last 3 years that we've really set goals, and we've set, our value set is ingrained, and our mission statements ingrained, and now
You're
we
really
are
running
trying,
it like a true, a corporation.
yes,
But it sounds like a corporation with a soul, which I love.
yes. This is definitely out of passion, and so much of how we started was based on gut and hustle, and not wanting to let it fail, and me wanting to help everyone. And at one point, my husband actually said, Steph, your first job tried to kill you, and now your second is trying to kill you. So you need to delegate, and you need to scale back, and we need to utilize you where you're best. And that led us to hiring more producers and training them to function, and really me going into more of a traditional CEO and medical director role and trying to get away from the one-to-one to the one-to-many. I love lecturing to residents. I love lecturing at conferences. The more people that I can educate, the happier I am. I loved the educational piece of medicine. I loved training residents. I loved being in the OR.
And you still are. You're just doing a different topic. That's all.
Right.
And same thing with me. Like, I loved cardiology. It was so much fun. But now I'm just talking to doctors in a different way,
Right.
So Stephanie, as we wrap up here,
Yes.
what's the number one impact you want to have on the world?
Oh, God. I want to be seen as a disruptor. I really want people to remember me as somebody who really acted out of passion and value and doing the right thing and shaking things up a little bit.
You're definitely doing that. That's awesome. I know, guys, this is one of the times where I'm going to ask everyone, check your disability policy. Make sure it's exactly what you think it is. I don't want anything adverse to happen to you guys. If you need a second opinion, please reach out to PearsonRavitz. That's PearsonRavitz.com. I believe, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then all other contacts for the company will be in the show notes. It's just good to get a second opinion. And if you're young in the game, then definitely sign up with them. This is awesome. I wish someone like you was around when I was starting it up, but I'm glad that this is available for people. And guys, reach out if you need anything. She sounds like she's like an open book and transparent and really willing to help out. So thank you again, Stephanie, for being on the show and educating people on such an important topic that's not talked about, in the podcast circles, but I think is so important. And guys, thank you again for supporting the channel. Thank you again for, letting the podcast grow so fast, and appreciate all of you. And until next time, guys, be phenomenal. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Limitless MD. If you found value from this episode, I encourage you to share this episode with a friend and let me know by leaving a review. For more information, make sure you check out the links in the show notes below or simply visit vikramraya.com. So until next time, my friends, be phenomenal.